Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Principal as a percent of bond price. Get ready. It's time to take your chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet and would like to follow along, note that we are in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab in essence being an answer key. We're going to have the information on the left-hand side, populating that information into the blue area on the right-hand side, ultimately looking at the calculation of the principal as a percentage of bond price. In other words, when we calculate the bond price, we're taking into consideration the two kind of components of the bond, the present value of basically the principal, the end payment at the end of the process, and the interest payments, which are basically an annuity type of calculation. Then we might want to have some comparison and think about what would be the price. What is the comparison or the relationship between those two components of the bond price? And that's what we'll get to at the end of this, comparing the principal as a percentage of bond price. And then you can think about how that relationship might change. In other words, the comprising of the bond price between the two components. How might the relationship change as basically the life of the bond extends, or if we have different rates of interest, or if we have different lives of the bonds. Okay, so information up top, we're going to start off in a similar fashion, basically calculating the price and present valuing the two components. The up top information, the par value 1,000, the percentage 17% matures in 30 years. You can consider this stuff as if you're imagining actually looking at the bond and seeing it on the bond, as opposed to this item down here, which would be kind of like the market price, the yield, the market expectations. You see the market expectation here as having a percent less than what the bond has. So if we think of ourselves as the bond holders, the bond issuers, you could think of us having the advantage. If we're trying to sell our bond, we're going to be saying, hey, look, you can't find a bond for 17% out there that's like our bonds. So, we're going to sell our bonds at a premium, you would expect then. So if we present value, we would expect to be in a better position. In other words, selling our bonds at something greater than the par value. Let's do that calculation. We're going to say that P, doing the annuity portion of it first, P times 1 minus 1 plus R to the negative N over R. I'm going to put that formula into our table as we've seen in the past. We're going to take the P, which is going to be the 1,000. This is the annuity portion, times the 17%. That's going to give us our 170. Those are going to be the payments that we're going to get. We're going to say yearly over the number of years, in this case, 30. And then we'll take the 1. I'm going to pull that into the inner column. Now I'm looking at the 1 plus R to the negative N. 1. R is going to be the 15%, the market rate. Let me make that green so I don't pick up the wrong rate. Making that green, greenify. All right, and then I'm going to make that a percent. Home tab, numbers, percentify, home tab, font, underline, using the trusty sum function equals SUM, sum, shift 9, and then adding those two up, adding the percents, home tab, numbers, percentify. Then I'm taking this to the negative number of periods, that 30, underlining that, home tab font, underline, bringing this into the outer column. Now that's going to be equal to the 115% shift 6 caret 30, negative 30 periods, adding some decimals so we can see some action, home tab, action, there is action actually there if you add decimals. Home tab font, underline, subtracting then so we can get the final numerator result. There's the numerator result, but we need some action because that's boring. 1. Home tab, number, percentify, so we can see some more details. Then the denominator is R. So that's going to be the 15%. Make that a percent. Home tab, numbers, percentify, and then underline. Then we're going to pull this to the outer column, taking that numerator, the top number, divided by the denominator, the bottom number. Percentifying that result, home tab numbers, percentifying it, underlining it, and then we can finally multiply outer column, getting our result, adding a couple pennies to it, home tab, font, or numbers, couple pennies. So there's the 11622 on the annuity side of things. Before we get to the present value of one side of things, and then our percentage here, our principal as a percent of bond price, we're then going to calculate this first component a few different ways. Next time, this time the magic way, using Excel, negative present value shift 9 rate is going to be that 15%, comma, number of periods is now 30 years, comma, And then the payment is going to be that 170. That also gives us that 116.22. Let's do it breaking this down into 30 payments of one present value in each one of them, which isn't too difficult to do in Excel. We'll just say 1, 2, and then select those cells and let the autofill handle figure out that complex series of numbers going from 1 to 30. And then Home tab alignment center payment is going to be the 170. And then we'll just present value this one at a time this time. This is going to be negative. Present value shift 9 rate is going to be the 15%, comma, number of periods just 1, because we're just doing the one payment there, comma, comma, because it's not an annuity, 170. Bringing this on into the outside, let's do it again. Payment's going to be the same. Present value, negative, PV, shift 9, rate, it's going to be the 15%. Number of periods, 2, comma, comma, future value, 170, and enter. Now we're going to take the prior value plus the current value, and we'll continue that on down. We're going to need to make an absolute reference of anything that's not in the table we're working with, that being like the 15% over here. So I'm going to double click on the present value, cell F11, put my cursor in there and select F4 on the keyboard, $ before the F and the 11, making it an absolute reference. Then enter, selecting those 3 cells, grabbing the autofill handle, dragging it down, and that automatically fills the stuff. So automatically filled it with the autofill handle. There's the 1116 to 111622. We could bring this one more time down and say, hey, why don't I just do that for like the last payment here, which is the 1000. It's still on period 30. And I could just say, let's just make this one the 1000 for example. Picking up the 1000 payment like so. And that'll give us basically the end result right there. So that's one way we can calculate the price. It's not rounded to pennies, but 1113 about, or 1131 or something. So then we're going to go over here and do this with the tables. Let's do it with the tables now. Tables are going to be the 170. I'm going to scroll all the way to the left. We're looking for 15%, 30 periods, 15, 30, making sure we got the proper table, this being the annuity table. 15's over to the right, periods at 30, that's going to be the 6.566, 6.566, 6.566, 6.566, 6.566, and then we'll multiply this out, the 170 times the 6.566, and we get then the same number once again. Now let's do the present value of the principal portion. So this is going to be the payment at the end of 30 years, way out there, $1,000 for the par value. Going to be using the good old present value of 1, which is going to be PV times future value times 1 over 1 plus R to the N. Breaking that out into our table again. That's going to be equaling now the 1,000. That's what we're going to get after 30 years, or whoever has the bond is going to get the 1,000. If we're issuing the bond, we have to pay that over after the 30 years. And then we're talking 1 rate then at the 15%, which I'm going to make it green so I don't mess it up again. Try to greenify it, and then I'll percentify this cell, Home tab numbers, percentify, Home tab font, underline, trusty sum function equals sum, S-U-M, of those two. And then Home tab numbers, percentify, bringing this into the outer column, actually number of periods first, which is going to be equal to 30 in years in our case, underline, Home tab font, underline, now outer column, calculating the 115%, shift 6, caret to the number of periods 30, adding decimals, Home tab numbers, decimalize, and then Home tab font, underline. Then we could take the good old numerator equals the 1,000 over divided by the denominator. Couple pennies added, Home tab numbers, couple pennies. So obviously that $1,000 isn't worth quite so much when we're talking 30 years into the future that we're going to get that, and 17% fairly high on the rate as well. If we add that to the present value of the annuity we got last time, present value of the annuity, then we're saying that's at the 111622. So we got the 1510 plus the 11622. Obviously, when you're looking at this comparison, what's comprising the price of the bond is a lot highly weighted, in this case, towards the annuity due to the fact that the annuity is for 30 years at 17%, and that end amount you're going to get is at the end of 30 years. Now, if you change those factors, interest rate going down, number of periods going down, time passing, for example, change in market expectations, then that relationship between the two factors will change. So that's going to be our final calculation, doing that kind of comparison to get an idea of what is comprising the price of the bond. So we can then calculate this one a couple different ways, though, before we get there. That's going to be present value, the magic way, negative PV, shift 9, rate is going to be the 10%, comma, number of periods is going to be 30, comma, because it's not an annuity, present value 1,000. There's the 1510 again. Let's do it with the tables now, because that's how we close things out here, because that's good times. The tables are good times. Now we got the proper table, which is not an annuity, present value of 1. We're looking 15% and 30. So 15% and 30 is going to be down here. 0.0151, 0.0151, 0.0151, 0.0151, 0.0151. Multiplying out the 1,000 times 0.0151 gives us the 1510 again. Now we can do our comparison. So we're going to take the present value of the principal, which we're going to say we got to this 1510, which is quite small because the principal, the 1,000 that's going to be paid if we're the issuer at the end of 30 years in our case, long-term, pretty long bond here, 30 years, means that's a fairly small amount. The bigger amount is going to be related to the annuity payment. So if I compare the principal to the price, which we calculated the price to be, adding the two components, the 113132, then I'm going to say this is going to be the principal, present value, the principal divided by the price. And if I make that a percent, home tab numbers percent, add a couple decimals, we could see that the principal is only 1.33% of the total price. And you can imagine how that relationship, again, would kind of change if the circumstances were different in the types of bonds, in terms of the rates that were taking place here. 17% on the bond rate, how long to maturity do we have of it, and then the market rates down below. You can imagine how these relationships between the price and the principal versus the value of the annuity would be for that price.